Hello, good morning. It's a good, bright Monday morning. You've tuned into CNBC TV 18. You're watching Power Breakfast. I'm Vinny Motiwala. With me is Vamakshi Doria. Vamakshi, very good morning. Hoping for a good week coming in today. But interesting to watch out for. What will be the important cues? A lot of economic data this week as well.
Well, absolutely, Vinny. Lots lined up this week, especially today. We'll have obviously the markets react to the GDP data, the auto sales number, the fag end of the earnings season. So
it's almost ended. Now only the last reaction is there. We are not giving you all more numbers now, for sure.
Absolutely. So let's get started with the top headlines then.
Absolutely. Starting with the top headlines for today and starting with the US markets. US futures slip after a mixed close in Friday's session. The Dow advanced 54 points while the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq ended in the red. Stocks in Asia-Pacific region opened mixed today. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a flat start for the Indian market.
Crude oil prices rebound after OPEC Plus sticks to same output hike in July versus June. Meanwhile, gold prices tick lower as the market digests tariff-related developments.
Auto sales data for the month of May are largely mixed bag. M&M continues to outperform peers while Tata Motor sales were below estimates. In the two-wheeler segment, TVS Motor, all segments registered a growth of 14% or more, while Eicher Motors Royal Enfield sales climbed 26% from a year ago.
India's GDP data springs a pleasant surprise. Growth in Q4 accelerates to 7.4%, the highest in a year. Growth in FY25 is at 6.5%, which is the slowest in 3 years, but in line with government estimates.
US President Donald Trump has announced that import tariff on steel and aluminum will double to 50% starting 4th of June from 25% in what he called a move to protect domestic industry. Hello, good morning. And, let's look at what the Asian markets are doing. We gave all the top headlines right now. Asian markets, a bit of a muted to a mixed opening is what we're watching out for. Taiwan index is down 1.4%. Hang Seng is down 1.9% as well. So muted start is what we're watching out for. China today is shut, so keep an eye out on that. We'll not see much of a reaction coming in from China today. We'll wait out for it in tomorrow's market. But as of now, what we're seeing for the Asian markets, nothing exciting that has come up in today's trading session. GIFT Nifty and Nifty implied open. Let's look at what that is suggesting. A muted start is what we're watching out for from the Indian markets. 22-point decline, 22 points decline right now is what the Nifty implied open is indicating. So Vamakshi, a muted start maybe is what we're watching out for. We'll see if this actually 22 points is not a very sharp fall. Hopefully it recovers, then yes, good. But as of now, Asian markets is not indicating a bright start for the Indian market. So we'll keep an eye out on what those cues also come in as.
Well, absolutely. Let's also recap what actually happened in the US market. Wall Street ended the last week of May mixed with S&P 500 inching down slightly, while the Dow Jones added 54 points on Friday. The tech-heavy Nasdaq also closed on Friday lower by almost 62 points. Major indices ended the month of May with S&P 500 hitting its best ever monthly performance since the month of November 2023, gaining almost 6% in the month of May. The tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite surged more than 9% for the month, and the Dow Jones rose about 4%. CNBC's Bertha Coombs gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street. Listen in.
For CNBC TV 18, I'm Bertha Coombs. U.S. markets were mixed across the major indexes in Friday trading as the S&P closed out the month of May with its best monthly performance in more than a year. The Dow up 54 points. The S&P 500 was flat for the day, but up 6% for the month overall. And the tech-heavy Nasdaq slipped 62 points. Markets got off to a rocky start on Friday morning after President Trump accused China of violating its preliminary trade agreement with the U.S. The president's comments coming after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that trade talks with Beijing were, quote, a bit stalled. Now, while the Chinese government did not directly address the comments, it did urge the U.S. to, quote, cease discriminatory restrictions against China. In an Oval Office appearance marking Elon Musk's last day as a special government employee, President Trump said that he is sure he'll speak to President Xi and hopefully work it out. Meantime, helping markets Friday, the Fed's preferred gauge of inflation. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, or PCE, showed that inflation barely budged in April as the tariffs implemented early that month had yet to show up in consumer prices. Commerce Department reporting inflation increased just 0.1%, putting the inflation rate at 2.1% on an annualized basis. But consumer spending did slow sharply for the month. It was up just fractionally, 0.2%. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back over to you in Mumbai.
Thank you so much for that. But let's move on. And U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer comments on the ongoing halt in the trade talks between U.S. and China and how China's actions are concerning. He also hints at a possible call between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Listen in.
You know, I speak to him nearly daily basis, as do his other advisors, and we've been very focused on monitoring Chinese compliance, or in this case, non-compliance, with the agreement, and we're very concerned with it. We moved, as the president just said, very quickly. No one can deny that. The United States did exactly what it was supposed to do, and the Chinese are slow rolling their compliance, which is completely unacceptable and has to be addressed. The Treasury Secretary, you know, his characterization is accurate, of course. I would say that, you know, conversations and calls continue at lower levels, but ultimately the nature of the things we're talking about, it does require some leader-to-leader understandings.
Well, the U.S. Trade Representative also touched upon the recent legal battle faced by Trump administration with respect to tariff imposition. Listen in.
Well, I think we have a very strong case. Congress clearly delegated to the president the ability to take action when there's a national emergency. We've declared a national emergency. We've taken action. We have a stay from the circuit court right now. All the other countries I'm dealing with in negotiations are treating this as just kind of a bump in the road rather than any fundamental change. So I feel pretty confident about the case. And if the case, you know, goes the other way, we have other tools as well.
Okay, that's all the global market action that we have for you all this morning. But how is all this going to be impacting our Indian markets? How should we set up for trade? What are the important stocks to watch out for in today's trading session? We have a team of research joining in with us to just do the same for you all. First up, we have Hormaz, who is joining in with us to get us all the market cues we need to know and watch out for in today's trading session. Hormaz.
Morning, Vinny. And, you know, it's a positive domestic update, but a weak global update, if you could summarize it in a couple of words. But, you know, it was last week was pretty similar as well. The Nifty went absolutely nowhere, trading in a very narrow range, falling only 100 points for the week. And it remains stuck in that 24,700 to 25,000, that 300-point range, which has been the story of last week. And if you could look at the intraday highs as well that the index has been making, it did close above the mark of 25,000 on Monday, but then it gradually kept grinding lower as the week went by. And this is despite the outperformance of the Nifty Bank, which was up more than 0.6% last week. So what was it that kept the Nifty gains in check? Now, it was the fact that FMCG, auto and metals were the underperformers last week, and that offset the Nifty Bank's outperformance, which was largely aided by the PSU Bank index, which was up 4% last week. Now, you should also watch out for the metal names today because of the announcement made by Donald Trump that the tariffs on aluminum and steel will be doubled to 50%. Now, of course, there's a sentimental impact, but there'll be impact for sure. And you also shifting now that the earnings season is over, the focus goes back to global cues, the developments on trade, the geopolitical tensions, all of it come back into focus. The regards to tariffs as well, those developments will be watched out for. And of course, the key domestic trigger this week is going to be the progress on the monsoons, of course, but more importantly, the RBI policy that takes place later this week. So for now, 25,079, which is last week's high, is the key to watch out for on the upside. So for now, the GIFT Nifty is indicating a cautious start to what happens to be an important trading session.
Well, an important trading session indeed, Hormaz. Lots of data points to watch out for. But now over to Ria, who will list out the stocks to watch for in today's trading session. Good morning, Ria.
Good morning, ma'am. Actually, let's take a look at the stocks to watch out for today. First up, we have Apollo Hospitals reporting its Q4 numbers. Revenue and margins have met estimates. Net profit has gone up by around 60% compared to the previous year, and the occupancy in Q4 has also improved to around 67% compared to just about 65% in Q4 of last year. And further, the board has also approved an expansion worth cumulatively rupees 1,329 crores in Bangalore. Moving on to Nykaa reporting its Q4 numbers as well. Revenue seeing an increase of around 24% compared to the previous previous year, and the EBITDA has also gone up by around 43%. Titagarh Rail, the net profit has seen a decline of around 18.5% compared to Q4 of last year, and revenue has also seen a decline of around 4.5% on a year-on-year basis. For Inox Wind, strong set of numbers coming in here. Revenue has gone up by around 142% compared to the previous year. EBITDA is also up by around 158%, and the net profit has gone up by almost 5 times compared to the previous year. For AstraZeneca, the revenue has seen an increase of around 25.4% compared to Q4 of last year. EBITDA also seeing an increase of around 75% with healthy margin expansion, margins coming in at 17.9%, 96% in this quarter. Two other pharma stocks will also be in focus on the back of some US FDA action. For Cipla, the US FDA has completed the CGMP inspection at the Bangalore facility with one observation. And for Alembic Pharma, the US FDA has issued Form 483 with 4 observations for its units at Gujarat.
Okay, Ria, thank you so much for that. Surely we'll keep an eye out on all those stocks. But what are we watching out for in the world of F&O? We have Sudarshan this morning joining with us to tell us just that. Good morning, Sudarshan.
Good morning, Vinny. So for the last few days, we have been trading in a range. In the last week, we saw both sensex and nifty seeing minor cuts, while it was a healthy gain, or say a 1% gain for both nifty mid-cap index and nifty bank. On Friday also, we saw largely it was a close in the red for majority of the indices. And for today, GIFT Nifty is also indicating a subdued start. As far as flows are concerned, on Friday, we saw FIs selling more than rupees 6,000 crore, but it was offset by DIs, which bought more than rupees 9,000 crore. Even on the derivative front, in the index futures, we saw FIs selling almost rupees 1,100 crore, and they have added long positions of just 800 contracts. But on the short side, they have added short positions of more than 6,500 contracts. And with this FI long exposure now reduced to less than 20%, it's at 19.2%. On the option front, 24,800 call has seen addition of more than 33 lakh shares. Also, 24,900 call has seen addition of almost 21 lakh shares. And on the put side again, 24,800 put has seen addition of almost 12 lakh shares, and 24,500 put was active and it has seen addition of almost 11 lakh shares. So with this, support for Nifty is now seen somewhere around 24,700, which is also 20-day moving average, and resistance is at 25,000. Lastly, one stock is in band, that is Manappuram Finance.
Well, thank you so much for that, Sudarshan. But let's slip into a very short break. Up next, we get you excerpts from our conversation with Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Well, India's GDP growth in the fourth quarter has raced ahead of estimates. Growth of 7.4% was well above the CNBC TV 18 poll, which had a forecast of 6.8%. Now, this is a slowdown from the 8.4% growth recorded in the same period last year, but remains higher than economists' expectations. The government has retained its full-year FY25 real GDP growth estimate at 6.5%, which is in line with its earlier forecast, even as economists predicted a slightly lower figure of around 6.3%.
And moving on, the chief economic advisor to the government, that's Anant Nageshwaran, said that India's growth has held steady despite global turbulence, and he maintained that the GDP growth forecast of 6.3% to 6.8% for the current fiscal year. Listen in.
Our economy is doing quite well. And if we continue with the efforts to bring in more foreign direct investment, and the private sector, if it continues its increase in capital investment, which we saw in 24-25, and urban consumption picks up on the back of, let's say, better capital formation, hiring and compensation, then we can probably achieve a growth rate which is at the higher end of this range. If not, we will be closer to the lower end of the range of 6.3 to 6.8 that we have.
Well, the GST collections for May reached 2.01 lakh crore rupees, marking a 16.4% increase from a year ago. The key drivers of GST revenue growth this time include strong domestic economic activity and a surge in imports. Although the data remains significantly higher than previous years, the numbers showed a slight decline from the record amount collected in April this year.
Shifting focus, Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal commenced his 3-day official visit to France on Sunday. My colleague Abhimanyu caught up with him on the ongoing FTA discussions and talks about maintaining the core philosophy of the World Trade Organization. Listen in.
We should conclude a free trade agreement before the end of calendar 25. My good friend Marosh and I are hoping to do better than that.
Also, sir, in a time when trade wars or even tariffs are shaping the discourse the world over, India is engaged in negotiations with several geographies, and so is the European Union. You're also going to meet the French leadership. We also understand you're going to meet several wealth funds. What is the kind of offer which is being given by India as far as investment into India is concerned? Is there any offer which has been elucidated so far from the other side?
I think India is a compulsive investment destination. Anybody missing the India story does so at his own peril. And I'm very confident, given the feedback we have had so far, our own experience in working with European companies, that the mood in Europe is to have India in their supply chains as a trusted partner. Amongst the turmoil in the world, India is looked upon as a stable, democratic, safe country, and therefore the European Union and India are natural partners for the future.
Also, as part of your visit, you're going to meet several of your counterparts from other countries, and we understand there's going to be a mini ministerial for the WTO. India has stood for multilateralism and has always batted against protectionism. Now, several issues still exist with respect to the WTO. What is going to be India's pitch this time around?
We believe that it's very important that we maintain the core philosophy of the WTO. Particularly, it's very important that we finalize and restore a dispute resolution mechanism quickly so that the principles of the WTO can be adjudicated upon and justice delivered. It's also very important that the SNDT principles, the principles of consensus, the actions against non-tariff barriers, all of these are discussed, debated, and we make the whole organization, the WTO, a much more future-looking, forward-looking, and inclusive organization.
Well, on that note, let's slip into a very short break. Up next, we get your cues from the commodities markets. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Now let's go across to Manisha, who's waiting by to tell us what are we watching out for today in the world of commodities. Good morning, Manisha.
Morning, and thank you for that. Well, I'm looking at the crude oil prices, which have, after two weekly declines, started this week on a positive note, almost a 2% off again in the markets right now. The street is reacting to the OPEC and allies, which have increased production by 411,000 barrels per day in the month of July. Well, what the street is celebrating is no surprises there. The number is on the higher side, but this is something that the markets have already worked with. Having said that, we've seen gains also come in because you're looking at Chinese demand expected to be on the stronger side. The first quarter numbers are out, and the global consumption rose by 1.2 million barrels per day. So that has been yet another reason supporting the market. The gold prices also seem to be trading above 3,300 right now after 2% of decline in the previous week. Silver, in the meanwhile, after closing a strong May up by almost 2%, has started June on a positive note as well. And that's exactly how we're looking at metals as well. So good opening across commodities in Asia right now.
Well, thank you so much for that, Manisha. But in some weather updates from the northeast, 30 people have died across Assam, Tripura, Manipur, Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh as the northeast continues to reel under heavy rainfall. The Indian Army, Assam Rifles and local volunteers are carrying out rescue operations. Around 1,300 families have been shifted to relief camps as several try to navigate the inundated paths the rain has led to severe waterlogging. Roads were submerged, disrupting daily life and causing distress to residents. Now, the latest IMD warning shows a red alert for the West Tripura region.
And with that, we are absolutely out of time on this edition of Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much for tuning in. Up next, your Bazaar Morning Call.